Oh, hey, everybody. Welcome into this NFL Game Day edition of the Pack-A-Day podcast here on YouTube. I'm Andy Herman. Thanks for joining me. I want to get started right away today. I want to go through division by division and label who I think are potential contenders for that number one seed in the NFC, along with the Green Bay Packers, and who ultimately could compete with them for a shot at the Super Bowl. So let's get started right away with the NFC East, the worst division in all of football, one of the worst divisions I think we've seen in a very long time. 7-9, 8-8 is probably going to win this division. Heck, what is it? I think everyone except the Eagles has 3 losses already. The Giants have 4 losses. The Eagles are 1-2-1. I mean, I'm not sure Green Bay loses 4 games all season long. So all of them are about 1 or 2 losses away from maybe being out of reach to compete with Green Bay when it comes to the end of the regular season. But as far as a playoff standpoint, let's be real. If Green Bay loses to Dallas or Philly or Washington or New York, whatever one of those teams, because there will only be one of those teams that gets in the playoffs, even with 7 total teams making it from the NFC, I'd be shocked if any of those teams or if any of those were able to make it in as the second team in the NFC East. But if something happens where one of those teams beat the Packers in the playoffs, it would be a massive letdown. It would be a total shock. Just don't see that happening. The season has a lot of bends still in it. We're only a quarter way in, but something will have gone very, very wrong if a NFC East team beats the Packers either out for seeding or if they beat them in the playoffs. It's just a terrible division filled with terrible teams. I'm sure one of those teams will maybe step up as the season goes along, probably Dallas, but they just lose Tyrone Smith for the season now. It's a banged up team. What was supposed to be their strength along that offensive line is now a weakness for them. They have a lot of things to overcome for the remainder of this season. So I don't think anyone in the NFC East is going to compete with the Packers for either of those two things. Let's jump over to the NFC North. All right, so Minnesota, Detroit, I think Minnesota could maybe still make a run at things, although I don't expect it. I don't think they're a very good football team. Detroit, I don't know what to make of them. They should be much better than they are, but this just feels like a classic Detroit Lions team. That brings us to basically the Chicago Bears. And I went over maybe like a week ago how I thought this start was really great if you're a Packer fan, and maybe the Bears pick up some solid wins and maybe they end the season 8-8, 9-7, but don't really sniff a Super Bowl, and they maybe put off that rebuild a little bit longer. I still feel like that's the case, but a win over Tampa Bay definitely does feel like it should get your attention a little bit more. And I feel like the way that Nick Foles has played, is he played great? No. But he's been kind of that game manager quarterback who can get hot at the right times, make some key throws for them, and if everything else works, they maybe have enough to maybe upset a Packers, not in the NFC North. I believe that the Packers are going to win the NFC North and would beat them out for any potential number one seed. However, when playoffs come, I do feel like Chicago could have the right ingredients to maybe make an upset of Green Bay, and maybe, I don't think contend for a Super Bowl. I think that's ridiculous, but upset some teams, whether that's Green Bay or one of the teams from the NFC West, maybe pick up a win against the NFC East. I do think Chicago could make some noise if some things go right. I think the first thing that they really need to do, I think they need to figure out a way to acquire a running back that fills in for Tariq Cohen. I know, that they don't use their running backs a lot, almost ever at times it seems like. But I feel like because of that, you want that running back in the backfield who's going to be able to do a little bit more for you than maybe David Montgomery. I know that they've used Cordero Patterson in that role a little bit, but it just feels like if they could get a dynamic running back, which is sometimes the easiest thing to acquire via trade, dependent upon, who's available and what teams are bad and things like that. But I feel like if they could get a running back to just give them a little bit of a different dimension. I like the wide receivers on the outside, Allen Robinson, and then, Anthony Miller playing in the slot, although he hasn't had a great season so far. I love Darnell Mooney coming out, and he's had a nice start to the season for, a fifth round pick rookie. So they've got some intriguing weapons. Jimmy Graham's playing a little bit better, at least as a red zone option. Hasn't really blocked yet and some of those sort of things, but I feel like they have some pieces to click just enough and maybe give the Packers defense some headaches. On the defensive side of the ball, when you've got a Khalil Mack, you've got that sort of playmaker. We know what Akeem Hicks is capable of. Their secondary's been a little bit better. I do think you can attack their safeties and their linebackers a little bit. Roquan Smith hasn't really lived up to expectations, but they can fly to the football, sideline to sideline. Eddie Jackson, Roquan Smith, they've got some speed in the middle of the field. Their corners have been better. Fuller's been really good. So they have some pieces on defense to limit teams when they're playing well, and we saw that a little bit against Tampa Bay. So earmark Chicago as a potential upset team as the season goes on. I'm not buying them. I still think that this is a good thing for Packer fans, but I think they have to start catching your attention at least a little bit more. But for the sake of this, debate and argument, I think Green Bay easily wins over anyone in the NFC North. Again, they win over anyone in the NFC East. So let's jump over to the NFC South. Interesting teams. I think first and foremost, the Falcons we know are not going to be in that conversation. I don't think the Panthers are there quite yet, which leaves Tampa, who just lost to Chicago. I think we'll know a lot more about Tampa. We'll know how Green Bay and Tampa match up after this next game, but I think Tampa's going to take some time to gel. Whenever you get a new quarterback, it's a new system for him. These wide receivers are working with Brady for the first time. You could see Gronk was maybe getting a little bit of rust off over the course of the first quarter of the season. You saw a little bit more out of him. Cameron Brate can make some noise. Tristan Wirfs has been good, save for his matchup against Khalil Mack. I really like that Tampa Bay offensive line. They lose Vita Vea for the season, which was a crushing blow. They've got some speed. Their secondary is underrated, so I think they have to be in the conversation. And then New Orleans Saints, I know they haven't been off to the great start. Drew Brees isn't getting the ball downfield a ton, but this is a team that still has a lot of talent. But I think the Saints are already lost to the Packers for any tiebreakers, and I think the Saints and the Bucs are going to beat up on one another, and I think the Falcons and Panthers are just good enough that maybe they could take a game from either Tampa or from New Orleans. So I think because those two teams are in the same division, and Tampa's already got a couple losses, the Saints already got a couple losses, I think that really sets up Green Bay again as far as having potential tiebreakers down the road or being the better team at the end of the season to hopefully clinch that number one seed and hopefully clinch home field throughout the playoffs and have that one bye, which is now very, very important. And this is probably a great place to mention that bye means more to Green Bay, maybe more than any other team, with that week 5 bye really early in the season. It is insanely important. I guess Pittsburgh and Tennessee can probably be on that list too, since they had to move their bye up into week 4. But very early bye for Green Bay, and I think that playoff bye would just be absolutely huge for them. So let's move to the NFC West. And by far the toughest division, I think. You've got Seattle, you've got the Rams, you've got the 49ers, and then the Cardinals. All of them, in my opinion, are improved this season. I guess maybe the 49ers aren't improved, but still very talented. I think the good news here, if you're looking at that number 1 seed, all 4 of those teams in the NFC West are going to beat the hell out of each other in all of those games that they're going to play in the division. And I think all of those teams are going to end up with 3, 4, 5 losses just because they have to play each other a ton in the division. So I think that's a benefit for Green Bay. When you get into the playoffs, those are the teams though that I think Green Bay has to be a little bit more concerned of. I think 3 of those teams are going to get in. I think Sean McVay and that Rams offense can give Mike Pettin and the Packers defense fits in whatever matchup they would have in the playoffs. Seattle, Russell Wilson, that offense can click on all cylinders. I'm not super afraid of Seattle's defense. I think Green Bay would be able to put up points. And then as far as San Francisco goes, still a very good football team, but I do think the loss of Nick Bosa is huge for them. He was a game changer in those games against Green Bay a season ago. And remember, too, they traded away DeForest Buckner. Javon Kinlaw's been good, but you're talking about, DeForest Buckner and Javon Kinlaw gone. Dee Ford hasn't played much, and when he hasn't been a major factor. That defense is going through a transition. I think, we're going to see what the offense is capable of with Jimmy Garoppolo coming back and some of those weapons coming back, but I don't see San Francisco being in the conversation for that number 1 seed because of the loss already, and then again the very tough division. I think it's Seattle and Green Bay are going to be the ones that are competing for that number 1 spot. But again, I think because Seattle has all those tough teams in the division, I think that's going to hurt them. I think Green Bay really is set up better than any other team in the NFC to get that number 1 seed. If they're playing at Lambeau, I know the fans probably aren't there, but playing at Lambeau, December football, this offense is, on all cylinders. This defense, I still think, has the ability to grow and get better. This season is setting up very well for Green Bay. Hopefully they can stay healthy. Hopefully home field actually is in Green Bay and they don't go a bubble scenario that would take that away and all of a sudden you're playing in Minnesota or something as the home team and the number 1 overall seed. But more important, I guess, that they get football in than anything else. So it is what it is if that happens. But Green Bay set up very well. I think they end up with the number 1 seed if things kind of continue to progress the way that they are right now. And that would be a huge get, not only for that bye, but potential home field. And everything would set up well for hopefully the Packers to make another run to a potential Super Bowl. That does it for me. What better way to end off on a show than talking about the potential for the Packers to be a number 1 seed and competing for a Super Bowl? I know the 4 teams that they played so far haven't exactly had great seasons, but I believe that this is not a fluke for Green Bay. I believe they are for real, and I'm really excited to see what happens. I hope you enjoy your full slate of Sunday action and Monday action and Tuesday action this week. Should be fun to keep an eye on all the different games throughout the course of the next few days. My name's Andy Herman. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Make sure to check out the Pack-A-Day podcast today. And as always, go Pack Go.